today we're really getting into something quite intense. It's this formal response that came out of Senegal from the new administration, and it's basically hitting back, addressing some, let's say, implicit criticism about their recent political shift, criticism that apparently came from Dr. Ismaila Ceesay, who's a minister over in the Gambia, their neighbor.
Yeah, and it's more than just like a diplomatic memo. This thing reads like a defense document, really. It lays out their case for this, well, revolution, as they call it.
Exactly. So our job today is to unpack what's in this source. We see three big things here. First, just how big this democratic change in Senegal actually was. Second, the frankly shocking political and economic mess they say they inherited. And third, how all of this is now causing some friction, some diplomatic tension in the region.
And the starting point, the big claim right up front in the source, is that this wasn't some fluke. They flat out call it a profound and widely celebrated democratic revolution. They're saying, look, nobody here regrets this. Quite the opposite.
Okay, so let's start with that celebration, the mandate itself. The source is very specific about the win. President Faye, Prime Minister Sonko, they pulled in over 54% of the vote, which, considering how rushed and contested that election ended up being, that's not just a win. That's pretty decisive, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a solid majority. And they link this, importantly, to how it was seen outside Senegal. The source emphasizes that internationally, people saw this as a triumph of democracy.
Right.
And even more as an inspiring model for Pan-Africanism. So they're framing it not just as a national victory, but something bigger, something that sends a message across the continent about democratic will.
But this whole document exists because of that counter-narrative, right?
Yeah.
The idea maybe floating around online that people are having second thoughts. How does the statement tackle that idea of regret?
Yeah, they tackle it head on. They basically dismiss it. They argue that what you might hear, especially on social media, isn't real widespread regret. It's just the amplified voice of a frustrated minority.
A minority that lost the election.
Exactly. The ones who can't quite accept that they were defeated so significantly at the polls. The source insists the real public mood is support. It's determination to stick with this new direction. Don't mistake loud losers for the actual popular will is kind of the message.
Okay, so the democratic mandate is clear. The celebration was real. But then comes the handover. What did this revolution actually find when they got the keys to the government? The source takes a sharp turn here, attacking that image the previous administration had, that image of stability.
Right. This is where it shifts from, let's say, the victory lap to the inventory of problems.
Yeah.
And they argue that stability was, well, a mask, a facade. They're essentially saying what we inherited wasn't stable governance. It was governance through suppression.
And they give specifics, which are pretty stark. What are the political liabilities they list?
It's a grim list. They cite reports of over 80 people killed during the political unrest leading up to the change. 80 lives.
80? That's a lot for political unrest in a place considered stable.
It absolutely is. It sounds more like managing a conflict zone. And then there's the issue of detentions. They say they found over 2,000 people had been jailed for political reasons.
2,000?
Yes. And that number included elected officials, people just trying to do their jobs in opposition.
So 80 dead, 2,000 political prisoners. How do you even square that with stability? It sounds more like active crisis management through force.
That's precisely the point the source makes. It draws this sharp contrast. It says, look, locking up your opponents, preventing candidates from running, people dying in protests. That's hardly the hallmark of genuine stability or responsible governance. The stability they inherited wasn't peace. It was the quiet that comes from silencing dissent. That's the political reality they walked into.
Okay, so politically they inherited trauma and suppression. What about financially? Because the source pivots just as hard on the economy, suggesting the new team felt they had no choice but to be brutally honest, whatever the fallout.
Yeah, the financial picture is, if anything, even more shocking, according to this document. They say when they opened the books, they found what the Court of Auditors called a substantial hidden debt.
Hidden debt, how much?
The estimate cited is around $7 billion US dollars.
$7 billion. Hidden.
That's the claim. Debt that wasn't on the official balance sheets. The source implies this was, deliberate obfuscation, not just accounting errors.
That's catastrophic for any economy, let alone a developing one. What did that discovery do to Senegal's overall financial health?
Well, it blew it up, basically. This hidden amount added to the known debt apparently pushed Senegal's total public debt to 119% of its GDP.
119%. Let's just pause on that. What does that actually mean for the country, for its people?
Well, imagine, like you said, if your personal income for a year is $100, but you owe $119, you're technically insolvent. For a nation, it means an enormous chunk of your national budget, your tax revenue, has to go just to pay interest on the debt. It cripples your ability to invest in anything else: schools, roads, health care. It almost certainly means painful austerity measures are coming. The new team is starting from a much deeper hole than anyone publicly knew.
And was there any external validation of this? I mean, $7 billion hidden sounds almost unbelievable.
Well, the source points to the IMF's reaction when this data came out. The IMF, which is usually very measured in its language, apparently described the previous government's handling of economic data as misreporting.
Misreporting, that sounds like IMF code for something much worse.
It's about as serious as it gets in international
Yeah.
finance, yeah. It's not just a mistake. It implies data was potentially falsified to get loans or hide the real picture. And that, understandably, just shatters trust with international partners, lenders, everyone.
So what were the immediate consequences of that? Did this misrecording finding have teeth?
According to the source, yes,
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
It led to the suspension of a $1.8 billion aid program that was apparently crucial. Money they needed, gone.
Wow.
And beyond that, it made it much harder and more expensive for Senegal to borrow money on international markets. So the new government starts day one, basically, in crisis mode financially,
Yeah.
which, the source argues, is why their commitment to just telling the truth, however bad, resonates deeply with the Senegalese people. They're saying, we chose painful honesty over a lie that was killing the country.
But you could also argue, couldn't you, that painting the picture this bleak is politically useful for the new team? You know, it sets expectations low, blames the predecessors for the tough decisions they'll inevitably have to make. Does the source address that potential skepticism?
That's a fair point. The source doesn't directly tackle the political convenience angle, no. But it tries to counter it implicitly by anchoring the figures, especially that $7 billion, to the Court of Auditors, an external, presumably neutral body. They're framing it as, this isn't our number, this is what the auditors found. By leading with this transparency, they're basically saying, we didn't break this, we're just showing you how broken it was when we got here.
Okay, so we have this popular mandate, followed by the discovery of deep political rot and a financial black hole. Now, how does this internal turmoil spill over into foreign relations, specifically with the Gambia and these comments from Dr. Ceesay?
Right, this is where it gets diplomatically tricky. The source really stresses the importance of Dr. Ceesay's position. He's a minister. And the implication is, when someone at that level speaks publicly, even if it's framed as personal opinion, it carries official weight. It's not just some academic commenting.
Especially given the relationship between the two countries.
Exactly. The source calls that relationship delicate and vital. It points out how intertwined they are. You know, Gambia is almost surrounded by Senegal. Many Senegalese live or work there. And crucially, Senegal still has troops in the Gambia helping with security.
Right, that military presence is key, so it's a very close interdependent relationship.
Extremely. Which is why, the source argues, there are unwritten rules about how officials should behave. The core principle they highlight is respecting sovereign internal affairs. Basically, you don't publicly critique your neighbor's internal politics, especially not at the ministerial level.
And they give an example of this.
Yeah, they say you'd seldom, if ever, hear a Senegalese minister publicly criticize specific policies of President Barrow's government in the Gambia. It's about mutual respect, about diplomatic prudence between what they call brotherly nations. That's the standard they feel wasn't met.
So why were Ceesay's comments seen as so damaging then? If they were just implied criticism?
Because, according to the source, even implied criticism from that level risks straining those vital ties. They see it as undermining Senegal's democratic transition, which they just celebrated. And it potentially puts President Barrow's own government in an awkward spot with its powerful neighbor. The statement pulls no punches, calling the intervention clumsy and ethically questionable, essentially prioritizing a personal takeover regional stability.
So wrapping this up, the picture emerging from this source is of a nation that went through this huge democratic change only to immediately face this double whammy, a legacy of political trauma and just disastrous hidden financial problems. And the very act of trying to be transparent about this inheritance is now creating ripples in its foreign relations.
That really sums it up. The joy of the election victory quickly turned into the gritty, painful job of cleaning up the inherited mess. And they're standing by that decision, portraying it not as regret, but as necessary truth-telling. And remember that final image they use is quite powerful. We, the people of Senegal, stand as the human shield of this new political project. It's a claim that this isn't just the government's fight, it's a collective effort.
A human shield. That's strong language.
It is. And it leaves us with a really interesting question, I think, for you, the listener, to consider. This source, this new administration, emphasizes transparency, justice, and sustainable development. So thinking about the region and all the challenges it faces, how vital is that kind of radical, immediate honesty about the economy, like revealing a $7 billion hidden debt overnight? Is that level of painful truth absolutely essential to build the public trust needed for a whole new political project, to even have a chance of succeeding in the long run? Can real stability only be built on that kind of foundation, however shaky it feels at first?